Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Friday, September 8th, I believe, 2023. It's about 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm still in the city of Pekanbaru, staying at my friend Adi's home. As always, enjoying my first cup of coffee of the morning. I don't know that I have a lot to talk about because I haven't done anything in Pekanbaru since I arrived other than work on editing videos from my last days in Padang and Bukit Tinggi and Painan and all those places. So I have a little bit of a backlog of experiences. I'm just working through the videos. And yeah, I just don't have the time, I guess, to head out into Pekanbaru and go exploring. Like even if I shot a whole bunch of video of my experiences here, when am I going to find the time to edit them? So I'm just sort of taking a little bit of a break from heading out with my cameras, and I'm staying in with the video that I shot with those cameras for now. And of course I've been doing a bit of planning and logistics because in a few days I'm leaving Indonesia and returning to Malaysia, hopefully. So the idea there, of course, is to return to the coastal town of Dumai and there take a ferry back to Malaysia. So I was trying to figure out all the details for that. My visa expires on September 13th, which I think is a Wednesday, next week Wednesday. But rather than take the ferry on the 13th, like on the very last day, I want to take the ferry like the day before at the very least, or even 2 days before, just in case something goes wrong. You know, give myself an extra day, like if there's a storm or something and the ferry can't leave on the 13th, then I end up overstaying my visa, and I don't want to do that. So I was looking at their schedules. The company is called Indo-Mal Fast Ferry. And for the longest time, it never occurred to me where the name came from. I just accepted it as a name. But Indo-Mal, of course, is a combination of Indonesia and Malaysia because it's a ferry company that travels between those two places. And when I took the ferry here last time, they were running ferries from Port Dickson to Dumai and Dumai to Port Dickson, and from Malacca to Dumai, and then back to Malacca again. So it had those two routes going. When I looked at their schedule this time, they also added, I think they added another town, Tanjung Balai, but I'm not absolutely sure about that. But anyway, they have a website, Indo-Mal, so you can go onto their website and see their schedule. And it turns out that they leave at different times on different days. So that also affects your choices. On certain days, the ferry might leave, I think, at 9 o'clock in the morning. Other days, it leaves at 11. And factoring everything in, I decided to take the ferry from Dumai back to Port Dickson at 11 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. So that's September 12th. And originally, I was going to go to Malacca because I thought, well, why not? I left from Port Dickson. Why not take a ferry back to a different place? I haven't been to Malacca in a long time, so I thought I could go there, have a different experience in terms of the port that I arrive at, you know, the dock where you arrive, and spend a couple of days in Malacca. But then I remembered that when I booked the ferry coming from Malaysia to Sumatra, they told me that the boats from Port Dickson were larger than the ones from Malacca. And that seems like a good idea because I have my bicycle and my trailer. So I kind of want a larger boat that can take a bicycle. And I already took my bicycle on the ferry that runs from Port Dickson to Dumai. So I know it's possible on that boat, but I don't know about the boat that goes to Malacca. I think you can still take a bicycle on that boat as well, but as I said, they told me it's a smaller boat, and I haven't done it before, so I thought it was best to take the familiar route and go back to Port Dickson. So that's what I've decided to do, and you can, I don't know if it's actually possible or not, but it looks like you can book the ticket online and pay for it online. So I went through the whole process. I went to the website. You can book your ticket in advance. You got to put in your name and passport number, all the details, because it's a ship that's crossing a border, technically. So they have to have a manifest of all the passengers, and they give that manifest to immigration, as far as I understand how it works. So the details that you give them have to be accurate. So if you give them your name and your passport number and expiry date on your passport, all that information has to be accurate, because it goes to immigration and it has to match up. When you show up and hand over your passport, they compare it to the shipping manifest and the numbers have to line up. So you have to be careful that you get everything right. So I did all that, and I chose a time, 11 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, September 12th, going to Port Dickson. It's also a little bit more expensive. To go to Port Dickson is 650,000 rupiah. To go to Malacca is 550,000. But as I said, I decided to do the Port Dickson route. Yeah, another reason is that Port Dickson ferry leaves at 11 in the morning, and that seems like a better time to leave rather than 9, because it's like getting on a boat, getting on an airplane, through an airport. You have to arrive 2 hours early, and it's a pretty complicated procedure because people travel with a lot of luggage when they take these boats. That's the main reason they take a boat, because they have bulky baggage, so it takes a long time for people to get processed. So you have to arrive 2 or 3 hours early. So if it leaves at 9 in the morning, of course, now you're looking at waking up at 5 and going there by 6. And, things get pretty early. At 11 seems like a more comfortable time to leave. And I know when I did this last time, coming the other direction, I stayed at a hotel just outside of Port Dickson. So I assume, I haven't booked a room there or anything, but I assume I will stay at the same place. So, yeah, arriving, late afternoon, then I'll just get on my bike and ride to this hotel in Port Dickson, and everything should work out fairly well, I hope. Assuming, of course, that I can get through immigration. That's always on my mind, going through immigration. So, yeah, I was saying that I went through the whole booking the ticket online procedure, but then I got to the payment page, and the only option for payment was a credit card. I thought if they had PayPal or something like that, I could pay them with my PayPal account, but it turns out the only option was credit card, and as I've talked about, my credit card is currently canceled. I don't have one yet, so I can't pay for anything online at the moment unless they accept PayPal. So anyway, I wasn't able to book the ticket and pay for it online. But then these ferry companies, as most companies do these days, they have a WhatsApp number. So I tracked that down and I communicated with them on WhatsApp and gave them all of my passport details, the date I want to go, and all that information. And they reserved a seat for me on the ferry. So I have a booking on the ferry. I have a booking ID number. It's all very well organized. And then I have to go to Dumai and pay for the ticket when I get there. And of course, you have to do that by a certain date and a certain time. Otherwise, they cancel your reservation and give it to someone else. So I have plans to go to Dumai tomorrow. Today will be my last day here in Pekanbaru. And then Adi has offered to drive me all the way to Dumai. So tomorrow is Saturday. He has work he needs to do in the morning. So apparently I'm going to go with him to work tomorrow. We were making these arrangements yesterday because he has to go into his office. And because of where his house is located and his office is located and where we need to go, it's really inconvenient for him to drive to his office, then drive all the way back here to get me, and then drive to Dumai. So it's better if I go with him in the morning to his office, hang out there for a bit while he gets his work done, and then we'll leave from his office. From there, there's a new toll highway, like a high-speed, toll highway that goes all the way to Dumai. So he's going to hop on the toll highway and zip down to Dumai. I've already booked a hotel in Dumai. I had an idea of where I wanted to stay when I was there last time. I stayed at this very interesting hotel right downtown, an old hotel, which are my favorite ones, sort of like classic hotels that were really nice when they were built back in the, decades ago. But since then, they've fallen apart. But they still have the original, what I call old bones. They have the old bones of the original hotel. So the price has come way down. It was a mid-range hotel when it was built, but now because it's quite old, now it's a low-budget hotel. But because it was sort of an older hotel, it has bigger rooms, large rooms, large spaces, and I always enjoy that. And I like the big old furniture that they have in those places. Everything is generally broken and worn out. Nothing works anymore, and that's why it's cheap. But I kind of like the atmosphere of these places. It feels like a bit of history. However, it's completely booked out. It is an Oyo branded hotel, and online they had a really low price being advertised by Oyo, and I think that low price attracted a lot of online reservations, so the whole hotel was completely booked, and I wasn't able to get a room there this time, which is fine. There's a bunch of hotels in Dumai, and I hemmed and hawed. I looked at a whole bunch of hotels, and I finally settled on one. I've never stayed there before, but it looks good. I almost stayed at a place called the, I think, K77 Hotel. I'd seen it in Dumai when I was there before. I spent some time in Dumai, and I was exploring the whole town on my bike. And I passed by this crazy looking place, an Oyo hotel again. I didn't know the name of it at the time. I just saw Oyo on the front. But the whole front of it is made up of these colorful diamonds, like blue, red, yellow diamonds, like a very colorful front to this hotel. Looks like a very weird kind of place. But it turns out it's like a low budget hotel, and it looked interesting. So I was going to book a room there, and I was just about to reserve the room and pay for it, but then I looked at the size of the room. I often forget to do that because they will tell you how big the rooms are. And these rooms were 8 square meters, which doesn't really mean anything to me. But then I was looking at a similar low-budget hotel, my second choice, and I noticed that their rooms, for the same price, were 20 square meters, so over twice as big as the rooms at the K77. So I went for that hotel instead, because I'll be showing up with my bicycle and my trailer, and it's all dismantled now, because we have to put it into Adi's SUV. But when I get there, I'm going to have to assemble the bike again and put everything together, because I'm going to be riding my bike to the harbor, and then they put it on the boat, and then I ride my bike, on the other side in Port Dickson to the hotel. So I need my bike. I need room to work on my bike and put it all back together. And this hotel, like I said, the rooms are over twice as big. So that's why I went there. What's the name of the place? The Wisma Samena Dumai, something like that. Samena Dumai. I know where it is, because again, I rode my bike all over Dumai when I was there before, so I know the area, but I don't think I saw the hotel from the outside. But it looks like a great place, low budget, but big parking area, nice big rooms, looks professional, looks good reviews. I think it has like a rating of 9.1 or something like that, 8.8 on Agoda, which is really high, especially for a low-budget hotel. And I think that is about it for logistics and my life here. Yeah, I can't think of anything else that's going on. My time here in Pekanbaru has been interesting because I came here with Adi as well. Like, he drove me in his SUV all the way from Bukit Tinggi to Pekanbaru. And this was at a time I was trying to decide, should I ride my bike to Pekanbaru and to Dumai? Should I try to take a bus? I was looking at all these different options. And I'm very glad I went with this option of just driving here and not cycling that road. I talked about that in my last video, just because of how dangerous that road is for the most part. and how steep it is. It's a mountain road, and I don't know if I'm in good enough physical shape to tackle that mountain road right now. So I was happy to hitch a lift. And then we got here, and the very first day that we were here, I think, was it the very first day? It was a huge rainstorm, just poured. I think there was heavy rains all over the region. So there was flooding in the streets here in Pekanbaru. I heard that there was flooding in Malaysia, like Penang was flooded because there's just heavy rains everywhere, and it went on all day. And it was a real thunderstorm too. Right over top of this house, there would be like lightning, and then almost instantly a major, explosion of thunder, thunder clap, shook the whole house, and then the power went out and stayed out for quite a long time. So I was thinking, had I been riding my bike, I would have been out there in that storm. So again, it made me like pat myself on the back, wise decision not to be on the bike. And then, so the power was out for a long time, which meant, of course, no internet, which was kind of disrupted my life. And then the next day, the power went out again, but it was a scheduled outage. Adi got a message, or he saw a notice saying that they're going to do maintenance, and the power was going to be out from like 9 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon. And so I lived most of the day without internet, which was not it was a bit inconvenient as well. But yeah, that's how that worked out. Yesterday, that was yesterday, and then the internet came back, after the power came back, and I do have mobile internet, but I don't know, maybe my phones aren't very powerful or something, but even when I have mobile internet, I was sitting here in this room and it won't connect. So I had no internet most of the day yesterday. That's been a big part of my life lately. Technology update. There isn't a great deal to talk about in my life. I don't have any new gear. Nothing has broken down in the last couple of days that isn't already broken or broken down, so there isn't much to report there. I keep running into my usual little glitches that are just everywhere, and I don't know where all these glitches come from or all these problems. Like, for example, with YouTube videos, especially like these behind-the-scenes videos, the only reason I can even do them is because I just do them fast. Like, I don't do anything fancy. Just record them, upload them, done. And even to get a thumbnail for the video, I don't want to spend any time doing anything on a thumbnail. So all I do is I go into like the YouTube Studio app, and then the YouTube program automatically picks 3 thumbnails for you. It has like a computer program that scans your video and chooses 3 images that it thinks would be appropriate for a thumbnail, and then gives you those as an option. And then you can pick one of those. But what I like to do is I'll download it, and then I add a little bit of text. It just says my video journal, and then I don't know. I put a little speech bubble, something that I said in the video, and that's all I do, and then I'm done. So what I like to do is look at these YouTube thumbnails, download it, and then edit it and upload it. However, even though YouTube gives me 3 options, I can only use one of them, because there'll be one that is the default, like this is the one YouTube has selected, and then it gives you 2 more. But the one that they've selected is in a high enough resolution that you can use it as a thumbnail, and if you download it, it downloads at that resolution. I mean, it's not the best looking photo in the world, it's a screen grab from the video at a very, very low resolution, but it's good enough for a thumbnail. But the other 2 options, even if the photo itself is better, like I like it better, the one that the program chose, I can't use it because when you download it, it's just like such low resolution, it's just completely pixelated. So even though YouTube gives me 3 options, only one of them can be used. Like if you download the other 2, they're unusable. And that puzzles me too. I don't know why it works that way. Why give me 3 options if I can only use one of them? But I mean, that's just one little thing, you know, that I've been dealing with lately, and I'm trying to puzzle that out, like why that is the case. And I haven't found any way to fix that. So yeah, what else? Yeah, nothing really to talk about in terms of technology for me. Out there in the world, there's a big topic, of course, because yesterday, or the day before, or yesterday, the GoPro Hero 12 was launched. The kind of release date for the camera was official. I don't think you can't technically buy it in most places yet. It's not in stores, but they released, I can't speak this morning. GoPro lifted the embargo on, you know, media about the GoPro. But it's one of the more complicated releases that I've seen you know, from GoPro. Just listening, I watched a couple of the videos, and it turns out they still have embargoes applied, so that even though people are allowed, because, you know, GoPro sends selected YouTubers the GoPro in advance and says, okay, here's the new Hero 12. It's a pre-production model, but it's basically what the camera is going to be. You know, they send it out early so people can use it, test it, study it, and then make a video about it. But they can't post the video until a specific day, you know, when the embargo is lifted. But this time, GoPro seems to have a series of embargoes. So on the first day, they're allowed to sort of show the camera and talk about its features, but they're not allowed to do side-by-side video comparisons. That embargo is still in place. And then a few days later, then they're allowed to post actual reviews of the camera, saying what's good or bad about it, things they like or dislike. And then a few days after that, then they're allowed to post side-by-side video comparisons. So it's a very complicated sort of release. It just seems kind of weird. And it was further complicated, of course, because there were early leaks about this GoPro saying that it was going to have a 1-inch sensor. And everybody was excited about that there was going to be like a big change to GoPro. And they were going to leapfrog ahead of the DJI Action 4, which was released with a larger sensor. And then GoPro was going to one-up them by a 1-inch sensor, you know, and everybody was talking about that. And it turned out that was not true at all. But that added some confusion. And then this, you know, release schedule, the different embargoes being lifted on different dates also makes it a bit complicated. So yeah, that's a little bit unusual. And looking at a lot of the YouTube reviews online, you know, whether or not the GoPro Hero 12 is a good or bad camera, you know, setting that aside, the overall tone, the reception that the camera is getting is that people are just kind of disappointed in it because they saw what DJI did with their camera and they were waiting for GoPro to, you know, compete, fight back, and one-up them, and then GoPro kind of just didn't bother. So for me personally, I kind of like that. Like, rather than GoPro completely overhauling the Hero 11 and coming up with like a whole new camera in the Hero 12, they basically just took the Hero 11 and added a few internal features. They just tweaked it a little bit and added some things, but it's basically the same camera as the Hero 11. And then they added some speckly blue paint on the outside, so they made the case, they added some speckles to it. And a lot of people are making fun of that. You know, I haven't heard of anybody yet who likes it. You know, they want to make it stand out from the Hero 11, so they had this idea to just add speckles, which, yeah, I don't care one way or the other. You know, add speckles or don't add them, doesn't matter to me. But people were, yeah, definitely making fun of that. And most people don't like it. You know, they don't want speckles on their camera. But my idea, based on watching all the reviews, is that this might be a good thing overall, because quite often in the past, in my experience, like GoPro might add like a new powerful processor or new sensor, but rather than taking advantage of that new power to make everything better, they would just add more and more features and things that uses up all that extra power. And then the GoPro just continues to be as glitchy and unreliable as it ever was, you know, like rather than just taking what they have and solidifying it and making it better and just improving everything that's already there, they would just keep adding more and more things, you know, and every new feature they add, every new piece of hardware, whatever, just brings more problems with it. And then all these new features, as a, you know, I'm an amateur the way I use my cameras, I don't need any of these fancy features. So all I want them to do is take the base camera, make it better, and add usability features. And then GoPro would never do that. So it sort of feels like with this Hero 12, GoPro, the company, just took a breath, you know, and said, okay, we're not going to go crazy. We're not going to revamp the Hero 11 and try to come up with something brand new. We're just going to basically keep the Hero 11 and then just sort of add some stuff. And I think if you sat down and made a list of all the things they added, it's a pretty long list. They added a lot. So even though the base camera is the same, it really is a big change. But almost everything they added, I'll never use. So for example, they added all these nighttime capture modes, which some people are excited about. You know, you can do star trails, and I guess there's all sorts of features they added to make that better, okay? You know, they added a log, you know, a log format, which is better for color grading. I will never, ever use that. They added the ability to attach Bluetooth headphones. So then, you know, you could mount your GoPro on the outside of your car, but while you're inside the car, you can communicate with it through Bluetooth headphones. So you could use voice commands to turn the GoPro on and off and things like that using the Bluetooth headphones, and even record audio. But of course, for what I've heard, that Bluetooth audio just sounds terrible anyway. It's basically somebody speaking on a phone. It's a very bad audio, so I'll never ever use that. They added HDR video, and I don't know what to think about that, because to be honest, I thought it already had HDR. I mean, you know, they says, oh, we've added HDR video, and I was like, oh, really? I just assumed it was already there, because HDR is one of those things that you end up not using. I mean, it might sound cool and it might look good in a photograph, but video HDR, in my experience, has never looked very good. So even if a camera has HDR, I never use it anyway. I mean, GoPro digital video already is very bright and saturated, you know, has that very digital look, which I don't mind. I like that look. A lot of people don't like it. You know, they prefer a more cinematic, realistic, true to life look. But I don't mind the bright, punchy colors. So I don't need HDR on top of that. You know, I don't need to take the GoPro video and make it even more punchy and saturated and bright. So I'm assuming the HDR, I won't even use it anyway, but they added HDR. They added, yeah, all kinds of stuff like that. The two features they added that appeal to me are more usability features. They added a tripod thread in the bottom. So now if you have just a bare GoPro, you can screw it into a tripod mount, just a regular bolt, you know, a tripod 1/4 inch 20 thread, which is nice, but it doesn't help me out. Like anyone who's a vlogger, it doesn't help them at all, because we always have to put the GoPro inside a cage in order to mount an external microphone. And once you have it inside any kind of a cage, that threaded tripod mount, you can't reach it anymore. So it's useless anyway. So that's great. They added a tripod, you know, threaded mount, but for people like me, we can't use it anyway. What we need is for them to take the media mod and put a tripod threaded mount on the media mod, along with GoPro fingers, you know, built into the media mod itself. That would be helpful. But So like if they release the Hero 12 with a brand new media mod, something that actually makes sense, then I'd be excited, but I haven't heard anything about that. And the other usability feature, which is nice, is that they added the ability that when you use the GoPro app on your phone to control your GoPro, now when you're recording, you get video preview. And for some weird reason, in the past, you couldn't. So, even though you can control your GoPro with your phone using the app, you can set it up and choose white balance and shutter speed and frame rate, and you can do all these things on the app. But the second you hit record, the screen would go black. It just goes blank. And now you can't see what you're recording anymore, which was the main reason I never used the app, because now I can't see what I'm recording, so it's completely useless anyway. But now they've added that ability so that now when you hit record, you can see what you're recording. So that's a good thing. And yeah, so those two things I like, the tripod thread, even though I'll probably never use it, and the ability to preview video, as you're recording it. I like that. And there are some other things I saw in there. They're talking about time codes. So you could use multiple GoPros and then sync them up using time codes. I don't know if is that a new feature? I think it's new. I don't, because I shoot with 2 GoPros all the time right now. And then I sync them using audio waveforms. But maybe using time codes is a more professional, faster way to do it. So that could be useful to me in the future. I don't know. And there might be some other new features in this GoPro that I'll end up using. But yeah, it feels like an incremental upgrade of the Hero 11. And they talk about longer battery life, but even that is really confusing to me. They talk about they've doubled the runtime. But the runtime, I think, is just the camera being on. So it's not recording time. So even though they say they've doubled the runtime of the battery life, that doesn't mean you can use the GoPro twice as long if you're recording, because the runtime is when you're not recording, I think. Plus, it only applies to the higher resolutions. So you get this extended battery life, for some weird reason, only when you're shooting in like 4K and 5.3K. Which is weird to me. So if you're shooting in 1080p, which is what I do, I only shoot in 1080p, for some reason you don't get this double battery life, which seems really weird to me. You'd think the higher resolutions would be more demanding in terms of power, so why would they double the battery life, but at the lower resolution it stays roughly the same? So that's kind of confusing. But hey, if they're going to give you a bit more battery life, I'll take it. It's not like I'm going to argue with them about that. It is funny, though, watching all the videos. I started with the GoPro official video, like when they posted a video like introducing the new Hero 12, and they're telling you about all the new features and all the things you can do with the camera. This is from GoPro itself. And I sat through the entire video from beginning to end. And by the end of the video, to be honest, I was feeling fatigue because it was all hypercharged, hyper action. Everybody was looping on their snowboards and flying through the air on their motocross motorbikes and doing somersaults in the air. They were out there, skydiving and hang gliding and jumping off bridges and doing all. I mean, by the time you're done watching the video, you're exhausted. But at the same time, nothing I saw in that promotional video had anything to do with my life. And I got a kick this morning. I was watching Camera Conspiracy's video about the Hero 12. He doesn't have the Hero 12. He wasn't sent one to review it in advance. And I knew in advance that Casey from Camera Conspiracies, he was not going to be happy with this new GoPro. And then he made a very funny video talking about all these things I'm talking about and how it doesn't really improve the camera very much in his mind. And he did one of his boardroom sketches. He does this comedy sketch where he pretends to be in the boardroom at these camera companies, and and the CEO of the company is talking to the people designing the new camera, and it's all meant to be very funny. And I could really relate to this one because the head of GoPro in his sketch was like a surfer dude, and he was just all like, hey, hang 10, man, cowabunga, just like using surfer beach language, which matches the tone of the GoPro video. It was just like all these people racing through the Mongolian desert on 4x4 vehicles and jumping over ramps and doing all these crazy things. And by the time you're done watching it, it's like, well, who are these people? Who lives lives like this? Everyone I know who has a GoPro, they're walking down the street and holding the GoPro in their hand and taking video of their children running around on the beach. I mean, that's normal GoPro life. And then this crazy lifestyle that they show on all these GoPro promotional videos, from my point of view, has nothing to do with reality. Skiers and snowboarders and constantly doing crazy stunts. So yeah, kind of by the end of the video, what I'm saying is this video was supposed to convince me that the GoPro was a good camera for me to buy. But by the time I finished watching the promotional video, I was like, well, that camera is not meant for me. It's meant for these people, And in a way that is true, because it is an action camera and not designed for vlogging, but I use it for vlogging. So it's not technically designed for someone like me, with my needs. I just end up having to adapt it in many different ways in order to use it for vlogging. But anyway, that's the Hero 12, and to be honest, at this point, if I had all kinds of extra money in a bank account somewhere, I would consider buying one, because the Hero 9s that I'm using are getting a bit long in the tooth. They're fine for me, to be honest. Like, one of them is kind of broken and features don't work on it anymore, but the other Hero 9 I have is still in perfect usable condition. But I do get the feeling, it's several generations old, and I feel like if I jumped up to something like the 12, I would see like a big jump in video quality. It was just like, whoa, wow, that really does look a lot better in low light and regular light, and maybe it has all kinds of features built into it now, like the menu system. Maybe the touch screen is better, because still on the Hero 9, the Hero 7, I remember the touch screen was really hard to use. It just was not responsive at all. It was really hard to change settings. And then it got better and better with every GoPro. And the Hero 9 is fine, but it's still not as good as other cameras that I use. So I use the Hero 9, the touchscreen, and you're like swiping. It's like, it won't respond, And other cameras I've used, it's just like, oh, everything just works. But the GoPro touchscreens tend to be a bit buggy, a little bit harder to use. And I'm guessing that the 11 and the 12, everything is going to be significantly more responsive and better than the Hero 9. But I'm not rushing out to buy the Hero 12 because, my Hero 9s are working. So I don't really need a new camera. I'm fine with the Hero 9, to be honest. Only if I had tons of extra money, I would probably, pick up a Hero 12 and then retire one of my Hero 9s. And then, So, for me, the Hero 12 seems like a fine camera. I'm not terribly disappointed in it. The one feature I was really hoping for was that they would take the front screen and turn it into a touch screen, like the DJI Action 4. That's the one thing I think they really needed to do in order to keep up with DJI, and they didn't do that. It's something I would use all the time, because lately I've been mounting my GoPro on a bicycle or on a scooter, and then the camera is facing me, and then now I want to make an adjustment or play the video back to make sure that it's recording, that it's working, and I'm getting audio, but I can't do it from the front of the camera. So I have to park the scooter, turn it off, put it down on the kickstand, get off the scooter, walk all the way around to the back of the GoPro, and then I can take a look at everything and adjust the settings. make all my changes, and then go all the way back around, get back on my scooter, start it up again, and go. At the front screen, if I could do everything from the front screen, to me, that would be very convenient. So, you know, you set up the GoPro on a tripod in a restaurant to film you having your meal. Every time you want to make an adjustment, you got to get up from your chair, walk around to the other side of the table, look at the screen, you know, do all your changes, then walk all the way back, sit back down again. But if the front screen had a touch screen, you know, then you don't have to get up. You just sort of reach across the table and make your changes, review the video. Oh, it looks good. So that would be a powerful usability feature to add. And to be honest, I was assuming GoPro would add that. It seemed time to do it. And DJI showed them the way forward, you know, to do this, and people like it. But so, yeah, for the Hero 12, no, GoPro didn't do that. And I guess the way you can get around that problem is by using the GoPro app, right? I never did that before because, as I said, you couldn't preview the video when you were recording. Plus, I just don't, you know, you're riding your bicycle. I don't want to be running the app all day long because it just drained the battery on my phone, right? Anyway, so that is the Hero 12. Those are my general thoughts about that camera. And now a quick pop culture update. I was talking before about a show called Mrs. Davis that I just started watching that show, and I was quite interested in it from the first couple of episodes. It seemed like a very unusual show, and it was dealing with AI, the topic that I'm quite interested in right now. The whole world is, you know, kind of consumed with AI, and so the show seemed very topical. But I was very, very nervous about it because when I read up on it, I noticed that Damon Lindelof was a key player in this show. But I wasn't sure whether he wrote it but he was like an executive producer. And that makes me very nervous because Lindelof has a habit of making or being involved in projects that don't make any sense. When he writes the story of anything, he just goes crazy. He adds all kinds of crazy ideas at the beginning to hook you and make you interested in the show. And by the time you get to the end of the show, it turns out none of it had any meaning at all. It was just a bunch of weird stuff he threw in for no reason. And you keep watching the show because you want to know why. Like, what did that mean? And how does that connect with that? And what's going on? You want all these mysteries to be solved. And then you get to the end of a Lindelof movie or TV series, and none of your questions are ever answered, and all of it was meaningless. So that drives me crazy. So when I saw he was part of Mrs. Davis, I was very nervous. However, I'm happy to report that whatever his involvement as an executive producer, the Lindelof effect was minimized. So a lot of crazy stuff happens in the show. And it's definitely not a show for everyone. You have to be a certain type of person, I think, to enjoy the storytelling here. And a lot of things happen that, to be honest, make no sense at all in the real world. And there's it could be an uncomfortable mixture of religion and technology. It's a very odd show. And there are some very strong Christian elements meshed with AI. So there's almost like two separate storylines going on at the same time. And the religious Christianity side gets quite weird. That is not your traditional world that you might be familiar with, you know, Christian beliefs and theology. It's a whole new thing. And whether you like that or not, well, that's up to you. So it is a bit of a weird marriage between religion and technology, and strange, crazy things happen. However, when you get to the end of the show, 8 episodes or 10 episodes, I think it might have been 8. So by the time you get to the final episode, they wrap it all up. Pretty much everything is answered. Whether you like the answers or not, I mean, that's a whole other question, but everything was brought back. So at the very beginning of the show, you're introduced to characters in really weird situations, doing really strange things, and then they just disappear. And in a normal Lindelof project, they would never come back. But in Mrs. Davis, all the characters you're introduced to at the beginning, they all come back, and you understand how they fit into the story, what their relationship was. Everything makes sense. So by the end of the series, all the threads of the storyline, all the characters, everything is brought together into a very satisfying conclusion. So that I really approved of that. It was like, that was solid. Because there was so much going on in the show. There's so many questions to be answered, so many plot lines that had to be, wound up. I assumed there's no way they could do all of it. Like, how can they possibly pull all of this together into a satisfying conclusion? But they pulled it off. They really did. So putting in all the work, putting in all that time, watching the whole series, it pays off. Everything pays off in the end. So for a certain type of person, I can recommend Mrs. Davis. If it's a show for you or not, you'll know in the very first episode. If the first episode hooks you, it's for you. But if you watch it and you're like, what? I have no idea what's going on, then it's not your type of entertainment. There was enough there to keep me engaged. And I can't really talk about it without spoiling it. But there was definitely one thing in particular I found very satisfying. Because so many movies and TV shows present the possibility of something extremely dramatic happening. But it's never going to happen. They sort of bring it up as a possibility. It's like in your typical thriller, there's going to be a villain, a bad guy, and he's threatening to launch nuclear missiles or a deadly biological viral attack that's going to kill 18 million people. And that's the conflict at the center of the movie. But it's never going to happen. I mean, the nuclear weapon is never going to be launched. Nobody's going to die. The heroes will win in the end. So that's kind of one example where, this over-the-top situation, this big thing could happen, but it never actually really does. And then there's other types of movies, where characters can, make a decision about something, and they could do something really dramatic and with a lot of heavy consequences. And you're thinking, of course, by the time you get to the end of the show, that's not going to happen. It never does. The shows don't have that much courage because audiences can't handle stuff like that. Audiences want the simple, happy ending. As a rule, that's what they want. And Mrs. Davis said, nah, we're going to go the other way, and we're going to give you a much tougher ending, something you're really going to have to think about. And I really appreciated that. I went, okay, I like that. So again, this is my kind of show, and the conclusion was very satisfying. So I ended up approving of Mrs. Davis to an extent. Yeah, it was a pretty good show. Unfortunately, I don't think I can say the same thing about season 3 of Only Murders in the Building. It's one of my favorite shows of season 1 when it came out. I just loved it, Only Murders in the Building. Very surprising show, different from anything that I've seen before. Really enjoyed it. But in season 3, they seem to have abandoned a lot of the things that, for me, gave the show its charm. And a lot of the charm came from the 3 central characters, played by Selena Gomez, Steve Martin, and Martin Short. So it's an odd couple, but this is an odd triple. The 3 of them, a very unusual group of people that came together, and together they were solving a murder as a team. And I really enjoyed that. But in season 3, they're all separate. So far, only Selena is investigating the murder, and the other 2 are just off doing all kinds of other things. So they're not together anymore. And it just sort of took the heart out of the show for me. It was like, come on, I want those three are supposed to be working together. But in season 3, they're all in totally separate worlds, dealing with romantic relationships and things that I just don't care about at all. I want them to get back to what made the first season successful. And I think for me, it was the three of them working together, a very quirky relationship between the three of them, which I really enjoyed. And that's all gone in season 3 so far. The building, the show is called Only Murders in the Building. So the building itself, what is it called? The Iconia? I don't think it's real. I don't think it's a real show. I mean, a real building. But in the show, it's like a classic New York apartment building with a history, with a building board of directors that runs the place, all kinds of weird characters. So the building itself was a character in the show. And the whole point was they would only investigate a murder if it happened inside the building. And that's why the show is called Only Murders in the Building. So I love that building, its history, its quirkiness, and the fact that the entire show was contained inside that building. But in season 3, you're not in the building at all. It's got nothing to do with the building. They're in another location, other locations. They're all over the place. And I really miss the tight setting that they had, being in that classic apartment building. And in the first season, it was all about their podcast, that they were in the building, the three of them investigating a murder, and they talked about the whole story, the investigation, in a podcast, kind of like Serial, an ongoing investigation. Week by week they would produce. And so, of course, they're all running around with little audio recorders and recording things, and then sitting in an apartment, with a nicer microphone, and then recording things. And that whole world of making their own podcast also gave the show its charm and was really interesting to me. So that I really liked. And then in season 3, nobody's making a podcast either. They talked about it once or twice, about a podcast, because they have a new murder, so they can make a new season of their podcast as they investigate this murder. But the podcast doesn't exist anymore. So all the things I liked about season 1, by the time we've gotten to season 3, it's all gone. They're not doing a podcast. They're not working together. They're barely investigating a murder. We're dealing, 70% of the time with Steve Martin and Martin Short's love interests. And to be honest, I don't like all the big stars, because the show began with big stars to begin with. And that can be really distracting. Like you're watching a movie or TV show. It's hard to believe in the character when the actor is such a well-known actor. It's hard to lose yourself. Like you see, Brad Pitt in a movie, all you see is Brad Pitt now. Because, when you talk about the movie, you don't even remember the name of the character. You just refer to him as Brad Pitt. But in this show, you've got like hyper famous people. The main actors, Selena Gomez, Steve Martin, Martin Short. All I see is Martin Short and Steve Martin and Selena Gomez. I don't see the characters they're playing, and that's enough. I can handle the three of them together. But now they have guest stars. So to those three, they had to add new characters, and they add Paul Rudd and Meryl Streep. And it's like, okay, that's just too much for me to handle. It's like, okay, I want some unknown actors. I just want people that look like people to me. So every time I look at Meryl Streep playing this character, and she does, a good job. She's Meryl Streep after all. But at the same time, she's Meryl Streep. All I see is Meryl Streep acting. And it just, on top of Steve Martin and Martin Short and Selena Gomez, now we've got Meryl Streep and Paul Rudd. And to be honest, I've never liked Paul Rudd as an actor anyway. And in this show, he plays a very unpleasant sort of character, which makes him doubly unpleasant in the show, Anyway, season 3 of Only Murders in the Building. There's a lot that's good in it. But overall, for me, I'm struggling to enjoy it. because I keep thinking about how good season 1 was and why I like season 1, and everything I liked about season 1 is now gone. You know, maybe they'll get back to it, but in the final episodes of the season, but yeah, I don't have a lot of hope. And as far as a YouTube stories update goes, I don't think I have a lot to talk about there. Itchy Boots has left West Africa and she's off in various exotic settings around Europe doing, I don't know, motocross. Not motocross, but what do you call it when you ride a bike for like hundreds of kilometers through rough terrain? A rally, yeah, motorcycle rallies. I guess she's meeting up with other people and doing these rallies, and yeah, it just doesn't really hook me, so I haven't watched any of those videos. I'm just waiting until she gets back to West Africa. And nothing else really jumps out at me from the travel vloggers that I've been following. To be honest, I'm kind of tired of the genre. Like YouTube knows that I watch a lot of those videos. So of course, whenever I open up YouTube and I get the feed, they give me all the suggested videos. Now I get like an entire wall of all these travel videos, travel vloggers. And now when I look at the whole collection of them, I just kind of heave a little bit of a sigh, just at the sameness of them all and sort of the monotony of them. Especially, I guess it comes with the thumbnails for the most part. I have this thing about thumbnails and clickbait, and I'm looking at this wall of faces of all these travel vloggers, and every one of them makes that face like, like they're just amazed and shocked by everything, and the titles are all the same, you won't believe this, I didn't expect this, and the topics are all the same. Like McDonald's in different countries for some reason is a very hot thing among travel vloggers, that wow, the McDonald's in Mongolia is way better than the McDonald's in the United States. You won't believe what they serve at the McDonald's in Kuala Lumpur. And so the McDonald's video is on every single travel channel. And I kind of, yeah, the genre is I'm suffering from travel vlog fatigue, put it that way. I find I'm more interested in niche channels. I find it, when YouTube first burst on the scene, what was so interesting about it for me was that it allowed everybody basically to have their own television station. That's really what it was. TV was no longer just a product that large corporations could make. Anybody could set up a camera and shoot their own little TV show, whatever it is they want to make videos about. So you get all kinds of unusual subjects, crazy things, and that was how YouTube was for a long time. Of course, YouTube has become much more mainstream and much more commercial now. I mean, all the biggest channels on YouTube are made by large corporations again. That's just how things work out. But there's still a whole bunch of niche channels, and those are the ones I enjoy the most. Like, there are all these guys that do magnet fishing, which I don't know, I find it really interesting. They, have a big, high-powered magnet, and then they go to bridges across rivers and they tie the magnet to a rope, throw it into the river or the canal, whatever it is, and drag the magnet through the water, and then it picks up all these things. And because there's people throw things in the river, so they find bicycles, they find safes, they find appliances, and they find a lot of guns, guns and bombs and hand grenades, all these things you just drag out of the river. And then they have all these adventures because they pull a gun out of the water, now they have to call the police, and then of course the police show up and they have all that drama on the video as well. And then you get people who take video of their work, which I find really interesting. It tends to be visual, like power washing. You get power washing videos, which I really enjoy. And what these YouTubers do is they give power washing jobs for free. So they just go around a city, look for a house that looks very old, and like obviously the person who lives there either doesn't care about their property or just doesn't have enough money to maintain it properly. So their driveway and their sidewalks are just filthy with, decades of baked in dirt and grease and everything. And then this guy just goes up to the door, knocks on the door, says, oh, I have a power washing company and I would like to clean your property for free if I can make a video about it and put it on YouTube. So in fact, they don't get paid by the customer to clean the house. They get paid based on views of their video. And then, so they do it for free. And then they take out their power washer and and it's so satisfying. It has almost that visual ASMR, basically, where you've got this filthy black driveway and then they move their power washer from left to right and it just leaves behind a perfectly white patch, and you can watch them. It's very satisfying to watch them. And then you see the before and after pictures. And guys who do lawn care do the same thing. They just roam around the city in the United States, and then they see a lawn that's completely overgrown, and then they'll knock on the door and say, I'll do your lawn for free. And then they spend the whole day, cutting the grass and trimming the bushes and taking out all the garbage and stuff like that. And then you get a beautiful before and after sequence. This is how it looked before, and look how amazing it looks now. And again, they don't get paid by the customer. They get money from, YouTube. And I remember I'm always fascinated by tow truck drivers. They have to go around the city and tow cars that are parked illegally, or they repossess cars if people are behind on the payments, and all the adventures they get into I really enjoy. And I really enjoy divers. Like you got the guys with the magnets in the rivers, but you also get these guys who go into the water with scuba equipment. And they'll go to places like where there's cliff diving, because when people jump off cliffs, they hit the water, they lose things. Like their watch might come off. They lose their sunglasses. For some reason, they were wearing sunglasses when they jumped off the cliff. Or a lot of people are taking video with a GoPro or some other kind of camera, and they lose it, and it all sinks to the bottom of the lake. And then these guys go in there with scuba gear and go down to the bottom with a basket and then pick up all this stuff that they find. They find wallets and purses, things like that, put it all in the basket, and then they bring it all to the surface. And then if it is something personal or important, they'll try to track down the owner. So I recently saw one. It's a guy he's a Canadian. I think it's a pretty small channel. He's not one of the big ones. Aquatic Monkey. So like Aquatic Monkey is the name of his channel. And in a recent video, he found an old GoPro. He thought it was a GoPro 1, like the first generation, but I think it turned out to be the Hero 4 or the Hero 3. And it had been underwater, for a very long time, but it was inside a dive case. And so he found it, took it to the surface, and he looked at the, got out the memory card, and it was still good, and got the video off the memory card. And then he posts some of that video on social media and says, does anybody know who these people are? And of course, he eventually gets a message, and then he returns. The people in this case, they say, yeah, well, we don't need the camera anymore. I mean, that was the Hero 3, and we've moved on to the Hero 11, so the camera we don't care about, but we would like to get the video. So then they send them, the memory card, stuff like that. And in this video as well, he found a wallet, and the wallet was just packed with ID, all the credit cards and debit cards and driver's licenses and all that kind of stuff had been underwater for who knows how long. And then he would track down the owner and return the wallet to them, stuff like that. So I really enjoy those sorts of YouTube channels now. They just feel more real to me and more interesting, more so than the travel genre sort of thing. Though something else jumped out at me about travel videos too, because I end up watching these videos of places that I've been to, but I went there a long time ago. So in the videos I can see how much the world has changed, and that's kind of interesting. I saw a couple of videos recently from a young American woman called Mandy Martin. And she went to Nepal and did the Everest Base Camp trek. And She's kind of funny. She has her own style, for sure. And I think this is sort of like one of the first times she's ever, I mean, I think in her video title, it's all about solo trekking, you know, making a big deal about going places alone, which I always find kind of amusing in travel videos as well. Everybody has to point out that they're solo, as if this is some sort of an extraordinary achievement in the modern world. But yeah, she's quite interesting. If you watch one of her videos, you'll see what I mean. And she's fascinated with animals. So as she's doing this Everest base camp trick, you know, and she comes across puppies or the muskot, the cows and the yaks. That's what I was trying to say. The yaks that carry loads up and down these hiking trails in Nepal. You know, she gets very excited about that. But one thing I noticed, though, was that when she would arrive in one of these villages on the Everest base camp trek, my gosh, it looks like a modern village in Switzerland. Like she's staying in like a beautiful hotel. I couldn't believe it. It's like, wow, because even Nepal has changed. I've only been to Nepal once, and I did the Annapurna circuit trek from, you know, Pokhara. And my memory, I have a few photographs of that time, but not very many. But my memory is of staying in these very rustic houses, basically. You go into a village, and at that time, where you slept at night was basically a village house that had been converted for trekkers to sleep in. And we would have these big mud wood tables, and there'd be like a hole in the ground underneath the table, because they would build a fire under there to heat it, and you got these big thick like yak skin blankets on the table, and you pull them over onto your lap, so you all sit around this table, and then your legs, your lower body is in this heated compartment, like, because under the table, you know, that's where the heat is, and then you got your jacket on and you're shivering there, and you're eating dal bhat. That's all there is, you know. Dal bhat was the only food you could have the whole time in these villages. And that was my memory of trekking in Nepal. And now on this Everest base camp trek, I mean, they're going from like nice hotel to nice hotel in these villages. And it looked like every other hotel you might stay in in parts of the world, you know. So I was kind of surprised at that. I was waiting to see where she was going to spend the night. And it's, oh, here's my place. And it was like the something beer garden, and then she's walking down a hallway with carpeting and all these hotel doors with locks and keys, and it's like, oh, okay, so that's what trekking in Nepal looks like these days. So in a lot of these travel videos, I do find it interesting to see, you know, how much the world has changed. Tourism, I mean, backpacking and traveling in places like that has become so popular, and so many people are doing it that, yeah, it just changed it a lot in terms of the economy of that kind of traveling, the places you stay and the numbers of people doing it. It's commonplace now, you know. I find that kind of interesting to see. But yeah, Mandy Martin. I think I only watched one video now that I think about it. It was part 1 of her Everest base camp trek. And I'm going to watch the second video, which is part 2, I guess. She was having some trouble at the beginning. Just physically, you know, hiking, and her feet, her toes were in a lot of pain, and she was in tears quite a bit. So she was struggling physically with the whole experience, but we'll see how it ends up when she gets to Everest base camp. And so I think those are all of my random thoughts for this morning. I'm going to shut down my camera and get started with the rest of my day. And tomorrow, as I said, I'm leaving for Dumai. I'm going to spend 2 or 3 nights in Dumai before I get on the ferry to Malaysia. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to getting back on the boat, though I'm nervous about going through immigration when I get to Malaysia. We'll see how that works out. And getting to the dock in Dumai and getting my bicycle and my trailer onto the boat, you know, going through customs and immigration here to leave Indonesia, that could be a bit challenging too. So yeah, we'll see how all that works out. So yeah, that small adventure starts tomorrow. So for now, shutting down, and I'll see you in the next video.